Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, Episode 5.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with a Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to bringing you useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to take your game to new heights. Today, we're going to talk green reading, and specifically the Aimpoint Express green reading process with John Hobbins from the Greenside Golf Academy in Manhattan, New York City. I believe the foundations of great putting include a correct putter fitting for correct setup, aim, and speed control, the correct putting setup so that the golfer can create a stroke that's neutral, natural, online and impact, and consistent, and finally, green reading so that the golfer can start his or her putts on a true line. The green reading part of putting improvement has for many golfers been more art than science. It's exciting to me that this is no longer true. This is great news for golfers who have often been frustrated by their inability to read greens correctly. So with that, I hope you'll enjoy this interview with John Hobbins this morning. This is Tony Wright with a Golf Improvement Podcast. And today we're talking with John Hobbins from the Greenside Golf Academy. He teaches out of Chelsea Piers Golf Club in New York City. John's a 30-year PGA member. I first got connected with John through a Factors for Putting Facebook page that he moderates. He teaches putting, he teaches full swing, and he also teaches Aimpoint Express, and that's going to be a bit of the discussion that we have today, kind of the focus area, talking about green reading. So, John, welcome today.
Thank you, Tony. I very much appreciate being with you.
Yeah, well, I usually like to let people sort of jump in and tell a little bit about their story, and I know you're a Pennsylvania native like I am, but kind of how you got. I see you've been in a number of places, so why don't you talk for maybe 5 minutes or so about, how you got where you got.
Well, it's been a roundabout trip for me. I started back in Pittsburgh in the 70s, which is my hometown. I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then I worked around Pittsburgh for a few years. I had a large sibling base, which I was the oldest of, and my father was no longer living, so I stuck around home and helped my mother with my younger brothers for a period of years. And then about the mid-70s, my youngest brother was, graduating high school, and I moved to Florida because I'd always wanted to be in the golf industry full time. And in Florida, I went to work at a number of facilities on the West Coast in the Clearwater, Sarasota area, and eventually became the head professional at the Country Club of Sarasota, working for Mr. Hugh Culverhouse, who was the owner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Ah.
And so we had taken a bankrupt facility that Mr. Culverhouse bought and turned it around, got it opened, and eventually were so successful with the country club that it was sold to the PGA Tour and Tour Networks and became a TPC club, better known these days as TPC at Prastancia.
Okay.
So basically what happened is we did such a nice job with that I worked myself out of a job, as Mr. Culverhouse was wont to say. But he was a wonderful gentleman, loved golf, loved to walk when he played. We always had to find a caddy for Mr. Culverhouse. He refused to use carts. And he met with me, a nice private luncheon, and assured me that he'd do everything he could to help me going forward because I'd helped him, with his club. And so he arranged an interview with the PGA Tour and the Tournament Players Club Network, which went well. And I was successful in the interview, was hired, and went to the TPC at Sawgrass to train for a period of a year.
Wow.
And then I became the sixth head professional in the TPC network. And from there, went on to work at a number of facilities, became the head professional at the TPC at Monte Carlo, which was in the Vero Beach, Fort Pierce area, and hosted the first ever senior tour qualifying school, which was a thrill for me.
Yeah.
From there, I went south, so to speak. I was recruited by Hyatt Hotels and ended up going to Puerto Rico, where I spent 8 years and became the director of instruction, head professional down there at the Hyatt Regency Miramar, which was a beautiful facility located right on the water, 500-room hotel that operated every day of the year.
Boy.
We had 36 holes, and obviously people from around the world visited with us. And so I honed my instruction skills there to the point where in the late 80s, early 90s, I was recruited by Golf Digest for a couple of seasons to come work with them. And so in 91, I finally accepted the position and moved to Trumbull, Connecticut, and became director of the Golf Digest schools. And did that for basically the decade of the 90s. Toward the end of the 90s, it became apparent that Golf Digest, which was owned by the New York Times Company, was going to be sold to a new owner. And I was at a point in my career when I wanted to do some things on my own and didn't wish to stay in that corporate environment and go through the process of new ownership. So I went out on my own at that time, incorporated myself in the state of New York with Greenside Golf Services Incorporated, and then as an offshoot of that, developed Greenside Golf Academy. I opened up an academy in the city and was very successful with that for about a period of 4 years. The building was eventually sold and I lost my lease, at which point I came down to Chelsea Piers about 8 years ago and began teaching a lot of my full swing here in the city. And that's been a very rewarding experience because I get to meet people from around the world. And then as an offshoot of that, I recently made arrangements that I'm opening my own Greenside Golf Academy at Trinity Center, which is downtown in the financial district. It's about a block off of Wall Street.
Wow.
And we're set to open that sometime in mid-July. So I'll still do some teaching at Chelsea. I'll have my own academy down there. It'll be indoors. And then throughout the metropolitan area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, I have the opportunity to do private club membership instruction, as well as I take my aim point green reading on the road, as I've been a certified aim point instructor and have been for the last 5 years. And that, to me, is a thrill to teach green reading and to help people with their putting, because in the industry of instruction, it is probably the least known way to get people better. A lot of people give putting instruction, a lot of people give green reading, but it's not systematic.
Yeah.
With aim point, it is. We've developed quite a following worldwide. We have about 130 instructors globally who are certified by Mark Sweeney, founder of Aim Point. And we work very closely with Mark on an annual basis to be upgraded into all the materials. We meet once a year. I usually see Mark another time a year to go over everything. And we have captured players on every professional tour around the world, winning tournaments on the European Tour, the LPGA Tour, and now the PGA Tour. Both of our number one players in the world, Stacey Lewis with the ladies and Adam Scott with the men, are both Aim Point Express users, and which has been great for us because it gives the process a lot of validity, which we knew it had.
Yeah.
But having the endorsement of top players using it has certainly been good for us. So it's been quite a journey. What I find out as I progress with my teaching and my learning is that there's always something new out there to learn. The biggest fear I have as a teacher is what I don't know and what I can learn to obviously help my students play the game with a little more ease.
Yeah.
So I'm full-time. I go 6-7 days a week in season, and it's quite an opportunity to be here in the New York metropolitan area because, we have the opportunity to meet people from around the globe, and it's always nice to give them some information to take back to their country to play better golf.
Wow, that's and as you know, I'm also from the Pittsburgh area, so that was one of our initial connections. I went to Carnegie Mellon, kind of close to Pitt, but
Right.
yeah,
Near the university.
yeah.
All the good people are, Tony.
There you go. Well, you talked a lot about your obvious interest in green reading and helping people improve, and that being an area where people don't know a lot of things. Can you talk a little bit about what you see when you're working with people, some of the things that they think about green reading that really hold them back?
Well, when I do my clinics, what I do is I'll pick a putt with about 6 feet of break, 72 inches or so, rolling across a medium-sized slope. And then what I'll do is I'll place a golf ball every 6 inches. So I'll place, 14 to 16 balls, which will take me outside of my break line, my aim point. And then I'll ask the group, anywhere from 6 to 10 students a group, I'll ask them to read the putt for me as they normally would. And they'll take a few minutes, some of them 3, 4, 5 minutes to walk around, look at it from various angles and so forth. And I'll get break, even though it's 72 inches in actuality, I'll get break of anywhere from, 1 foot to 3 feet, which is typically half of what I'm actually going to break when I putt, the amount of break that I'm going to play. And so we know right away that, and when everybody sees everybody else giving different information than them, I always say to them, I said, well, we know for certain one of you there's a possibility of one of you being correct, but there's a greater possibility of all of you being wrong. And then I'll roll the ball on a 6-foot break line, which we call our aim point, and they're astonished that there's that much break. And I'm not talking about just amateurs. I'm talking about good club professionals, playing professionals here in our metropolitan section. I recently gave 2 clinics, one on Long Island and one in Westchester for the Met section professionals. And in doing so, we get educational credits toward our membership requirements. And I was hoping to get 12 to 15 players per clinic. And I thought that would be a nice, turnout, because it was midweek. It was in the spring when everybody's getting ready for their membership and, the opening of their clubs and so forth. And I ended up getting 40-plus professionals at each one of my clinics. We had a total of about 85 attend the 2 clinics, which I was just very, very pleased and astonished with. And to a person, and this is the amazing part, in both clinics, to a person, I had 85 golf professionals, and not one of them disagreed with me about what we were doing.
Yeah.
And which goes to show you just how good the process is. Because anytime you put 3 or 4 golf professionals together about a topic regarding golf or golf instruction, you'll get various opinions, some of them opposing. So when I had all that confirmation, best teaching and playing professionals in the metropolitan section, which is one of I feel one of the top sections in our country, with regard to the PGA of America's sections, there's 41, including Hawaii, that we had quite a bit of validation for what we're doing. Now, the interesting thing is that a lot of people, when they read greens, aren't sure of the process of how to go about it. So basically, they read on experience, they read on what they're seeing. And a lot of times, as we saw with the amount of break, 4 or 5 people may see 4 or 5 different amounts of break.
Yeah.
So you definitely need some type of strategic process by which to go in and figure out exactly why a green breaks. We teach them why greens, have a break to them, the putting surface, what creates break. And then there are factors along with that will determine how much break one needs to play to be successful in rolling the ball, toward the hole.
Wow. That many people just totally disagree, and that's really interesting. Now,
it happens every clinic.
Every clinic, wow. Now, I know you're starting, and at the end we'll talk about the fact that you're actually going to be here in our area teaching some of the express clinics. I guess that's been going on for about a year that they're using that new process. Isn't that right?
Excuse me. Yes, we had been using what we had called a midpoint read, which we still use. It's a very accurate read. It's used by a lot of the tour players. It necessitates a chart which has been approved by the USGA. And as an outgrowth of that, we were looking for a process that we could teach to juniors, because not all the juniors are going to go out and examine the greens and figure out the amount of slope and be able to use the book successfully. So we were figuring out, like a Cliff Notes version, if you will, of the midpoint read, so that we could teach a process which was a little less sophisticated to utilize. And in that, Mark Sweeney, who is the founder of Aimpoint, had been talking with some people and teaching a gentleman who was involved in archery, and he was explaining how the use of the fingers on the hand were used for certain distance calculations and so forth. And then we came to find out that in astronomy, astronomers also would use their fingers for different calculations in the sky. So he thought there was something there that could help us help the kids learn how to read greens. So he started working with a few of the instructors and a few of the junior clinics, and developed what we call a first-generation approach to what is now known as the express read. And then in doing so, over the last 8 to 10 months, it has been continually refined time and again to what we have and teach today. So we've gone through multiple generations of refinement in making the read easier and accurate.
Yeah.
So I can teach anybody from the age of 5 or 6 up to somebody who is an elderly golfer who doesn't want to spend a lot of time out there practicing their green reading techniques. So it's an amazing process, one which Adam Scott adopted. Stacy Lewis and her caddy Travis Wilson have won 10 times with Aimpoint, and recently adopted the express read to go with the midpoint read that she also utilizes.
Yeah. Now, obviously, in teaching this, you've worked with a couple of people. Can you talk about any, some of your personal successes with some of the folks you've worked with in terms of using the express read? Or
yes, what I found when teaching it is, and I don't teach anything that I don't do myself, and I go through a process of utilizing the information, finding out the best way to offer it to my students. And in that process, what I realized the greatest thing point is not, in my mind, the ability to read the amount of break successfully, even though obviously that's the target of it. But in the process of doing that, because we have such confidence in our reads, our putting strokes free up. Somebody to read the green better, and I've gone through this with a number of the top players here in the metropolitan section who I've worked with, both in a clinic setting and personally. It's to a person, and I found this out too, but I never shared it with anybody because I wanted to get responses from other people, is when I get over a putt, I'm no longer concerned about the read. I know my read is perfect. So now all I have to do is focus on getting the ball to roll on the correct line. And so it frees up my stroke because I have such confidence in my read that my putting stroke has improved due to my green reading technique being much better and much more accurate. And all of my top players that I work with have seen the same thing. They're making more birdies. They're making more putts inside 20 feet. One of the better players in the section was telling me that when he goes out now, he says, if I don't knock it in from 20 feet, he says, I'm mad at myself. I feel that I read it so well. And he says, I hit so many edges of cups that I never hit before. And he says, I seldom underread a putt. And before I introduced him to Aimpoint and the express read, which he uses now, he said, I would underread a putt by anywhere from 6 to 12, 14, 15 inches. He says, I never do that anymore.
Wow.
And he said, my green reading technique has so improved his stroke. And he said, the thing I do better now than I ever did before, because I know how much break is going to be there. I can see it. He says, I can put my ball on that line. He says, my ability to gauge my distance has greatly improved because, see, when I'm hitting a 20-foot putt, I may end up hitting with break a 22-foot putt because I'm allowing for a couple feet of temperature. And he said, my distance control speed has so much improved that he says, I'm rolling the ball. If I don't make the putt, 6 to 12, 14 inches past the hole. And in so doing at such a speed, he says, I'm able to hold my line, but at the same time, I'm able to capture, half of the cup, like if you divide the cup, say, from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and he's going from left to right, well, that, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, he says, my ball has a chance to fall in that entire half of the cup.
Yeah.
The speed is so good. Whereas if the ball's rolling fast, where it's going to roll, anywhere between, just say, 18 inches to 3 past the cup, that greatly diminishes the size of the cup that we call capture the ball. So let this roll slowly toward the cup. You expand the size of the cup. When it's rolling quickly, you diminish the acceptable area that the cup can receive the golf ball and let it be holed out.
Wow, that's exciting stuff. And that's kind of what I expect. If you think about it too, go ahead.
People.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah. Any other things that you want to just sort of suggest to golfers related to green reading? I mean, obviously, I know you're definitely committed to the express process, but some other things you want to mention today before we kind of sign off.
Certainly would. The express read along with the midpoint read, which is a little more sophisticated read, and without the doubt, the best green reading techniques I have ever seen. The thing that I would tell most golfers is learn this process. Get yourself involved. We have instructors around the globe that teach this. We have our Aimpoint website, which you can go on to find an instructor in your area. I do quite a bit of traveling, as I'll be doing in July when I have the good fortune of coming down to Tennessee to see you and Scott and do some clinics in the Crossville area. But things that I think hurt people when they try to read a green is the interpretation of what grain is. People look at grain as if it's some kind of a mystical substance in the green that makes a ball roll a certain way. And we define grain as the way the grass grows, the way the water drains, which is downhill. So 99% of the time, there are a couple courses in Hawaii that the tour plays that grow a little differently with the grain, but 99% of the time, grain is growing downhill. It grows downhill because water drains downhill.
Yeah.
You take your putter and rub it on the green. If you're rubbing your putter into the grain, the grass will stand up. And then if you rub it the opposite way to smooth it out, which will be down the hill, it'll lay back down. That's all grain is. Putts downhill take more time to roll the same distance than putts uphill because they're rolling with gravity. So uphill putts are going to roll a lot faster or have to be hit a lot harder and roll faster because they're against gravity. Downhill putts are hit a lot softer because they're rolling with gravity. The softer the ball rolls across a slope, the more the amount of slope there is going to create more break. So downhill putts of the same length at the same angle will break more than uphill putts.
Yeah.
You got to understand that. The best way to read a green is with your feet, not with your eyes, because you can feel the tilt in the green. And one of the things we do with Aimpoint is the first thing we have you understand is there's only one factor that creates break on a putting surface, and that is that the green is tilted one way or the other, to the right or to the left. Even an uphill putt that breaks, you're getting two different planes of motion, one uphill, and then if it's breaking right to left, one side hill, which makes the ball again roll downhill. So putts can only break downhill. They do not break any other way.
Yeah, that's right.
Putt, which is a story I get all the time, but they'll say, well, it's an uphill putt. And I said, well, that plane that it's rolling on initially is uphill, but then it runs into another slope that's side hill, right to left. That's what creates the break and makes it roll, downhill. That's the only way a putt will break. And then once you understand the tilt of the green, then the other factors that will determine the amount of break are how fast does the green roll, commonly referred to as stimp. And stimp is nothing more than the friction of the golf ball on the surface. The faster the stimp, the faster the green speed, the faster the putt's going to roll, the more break will be there.
Yeah.
The angle to the uphill slope, think of a fall line in skiing. Well, your golf ball is putting across a slope on a certain angle to that uphill line. The more angle you create from the fall line, if you will, what we refer to in Aimpoint as the zero line, the more the putt will break. And the greater distance the ball travels, obviously, will will create more breaks. So what we have found in doing our different computer programs with algorithms is that a 10-foot putt, Tony, will break usually 3 times the amount that a 5-foot putt will break.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they read a green, they think, well, if I have 6 inches of break at 5 feet, I'll have 10 inches of break at 10 feet. It's more like 15 inches of break. Most people will underread putts, regardless of how good a player they are.
Yeah. Until they learn what to really do.
Until they learn
what it takes. Yeah. Well, John, this has been a great interview today. I learned a few things that I didn't know, and I know I'm going to be taking those clinics in July, so I'm going to learn a little bit more.
I certainly look forward to having you there and getting the opportunity to share some things about everything you do with putting and your club fitting and your putter fitting, which is such a big process for the putter, because if they're playing with an implement, i.e. the golf club, and in this case the putter that is not fitted to their eye and their lie angle, due to how they hold their putter and so forth, then it's a much more difficult process. So I'm looking forward to being with you and better understanding your fitting processes that help the golfers improve their putting as well. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Well, I want to end now and talk a little bit about how you can find out more about John. He's at the Greenside Golf Academy, and his website is www.greensidegolfacademy.com, and he also does a blog on that website that's a very interesting read. And also, as we mentioned, John's going to be in the East Tennessee area doing Aim Point Express clinics at the Stonehenge Golf Club in Crossville, Tennessee on July 18th and 19th. And if any of you listening to this podcast are interested in signing up for those clinics, and I hope you've heard enough today to suggest that you would really get a lot of benefit out of that, get in touch with me. I'll provide some other my contact information again at the end of the podcast and on my website for you to do so. Thanks again, John, for a great interview today and for teaching us a lot more about green reading, and looking forward to seeing you near the end of July.
Tony, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure, and I appreciate your interest in making golfers better.
Thanks a lot.
www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Well, I hope all of you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. You can learn more about John Hobbins and the Greenside Golf Academy at www.greensidegolfacademy.com. You can also learn more about the Aim Point green reading technique at www.aimpointgolf.com. And, as mentioned by John, he will be conducting 2-hour Aim Point Express clinics on July 18th and 19th at Stonehenge Golf Course in Crossville, Tennessee. To learn more details about these clinics and how taking one will improve your putting immediately, and how to sign up to attend, contact me at 865-384-3753 or at tony@gameimprovementgolf.com. And that's it for today. In 2 weeks, I'll be talking with Mark Martins from Golf Clubs and Repairs in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mark and I will be talking custom club fitting and how it can help you play your best golf. See you then.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.